So I get a lot of questions about the course project. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to address a few important details, especially concerning the proposal. So in order to find this information, you have to go to modules on the landing page for the course, and then at the top of the page there is a link called Course Project Overview. So once you click on Course Project Overview, you will come to this page here, which has a lot of information, and it can be quite confusing. Think of the project, though, as something you're going to build brick by brick until we get to the end of the course and you write a full project, essay, research paper. But we are going to approach it in pieces, and a lot of what you do is something that can be reused as you move forward. A lot of what you write can be implemented in the final draft. But to begin with, you have to select a topic from this list. The wording here is a little confusing. Rather than repeat it to you, let me just say you need to have a defendable position on one of these topics. So you choose the topic, take a stance that can be argued for or against. It needs to be something that's worthy of conversation, worthy of debate, that requires some research. So the proposal is going to consist of really, I'd say, 3 parts ultimately. You're going to have your introduction paragraph, which is going to be the same introduction and thesis that you use in your final essay. So the first paragraph is your introduction, which is really you just stating the situation, the context, the topic. Tell us what you're about to tell us. Raise the issue. Discuss how some have viewed it one way versus another way. It's really where you're just kind of priming the pump. An introduction is always doing the function of telling your reader what you're about to tell them. And when you end your introduction paragraph, you should have a clear, concise, multi-point thesis. And that is where you explicitly state your claim and you include your points of discussion in that statement. So if I was to, for instance, if I was investigating the history of slavery and I was going to discuss ways in which history impacts contemporary society, first of all, I'd have to make a statement that the history of slavery actually does impact contemporary society. So that's my claim, is that there is an impact. Then I would follow it with 3 or 4, probably in this case I would lean towards 4 points to discuss in my paper, because this is going to end up being a pretty long paper in the end. And so I might say, the history of slavery has left an indelible impact on contemporary society, where lasting elements of racism still exist, discrimination still occurs in the workplace, and violence by police officers against African Americans, still taking place today. And you see what I'm saying? By giving those points, that I'm sort of supporting some stuff that's happened, my claim that there's an impact, it's an effect, it's a residual effect of this issue from the past impacting contemporary society today. And so that would be my thesis, laying it out. The history of slavery has an impact on contemporary society, and you can see this in A, B, C, and D. So that would be like the last sentence of your introduction. Then the middle part of your proposal should be reviewing some piece of literature that supports your claim and your thesis. That is going to be something you use in your essay. So at that point, I would address an article, and I would say, this this idea of the lasting impact of slavery was put forth in a research study by Bob Jones in 2002 in the Journal of History of Ideas or something. And then from there, I would explain what Bob Jones' topic, thesis, main idea was in the article, what conclusions were arrived at, and I would kind of unpack these ideas, and I would make them relative to what I'm saying. And I would do what we call kind of a literature review of an article. So this way, now you've stated in your introduction that there is an issue. You've given a thesis where you've taken a stance. You've given your claim, and you've offered some supporting examples that you're going to unpack in your research project. Then you move into this literature review, and you say, you're pointing to scholars, and you're saying, hey, here's a scholar over here who said this, or something along these lines, and let's kind of investigate it further to kind of substantiate and make a case that I have a viable project here. And then after that, this is where people often are like, well, I don't know what to do after that. Well, continue to make your case. Talk about how you will go about solving your problem. Look at some different angles, subtopics, consider some possible methodology that you may use to research where you're going to look, what kind of studies you're interested in. And this is the point where you're really trying to sell that you have a viable project. And if you can't make a case for a project in a proposal, you may not have a viable project. You might need to change topics. But it would be in that latter portion of your proposal where you're going to discuss different angles, subtopics, ideas that are relevant to what you're talking about in your paper. So, and that's the biggest first grade that we have. And then after that, we're going to do an annotated bibliography. And this is where you take a list of sources that are all scholarly. Okay, so no websites, no popular culture kind of sites or books. We're looking at scholarly sources. That means you should find them through the database that the university has through the library. And it should be a scholar. And sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about what a scholarly resource is, and I'll clear the air for you. A scholarly resource is something written by scholars to scholars. And it's not to say that you can't find reliable information in other places. And to be honest, in this project, you can use other popular culture resources, but you have to have the minimum of scholarly sources. So when you do your annotated bibliography, what you'll do is lay out a list of scholarly sources. And for each scholarly source, you're going to give an annotation. Basically, an annotation is something that like another person can read and know exactly what that article or book is about. And also, your job is to indicate the usefulness of this source. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a smaller version of a literature review. like you've done in your proposal, but you're going to do it for, several scholarly sources. You're going to discuss for each one what it's about, what are the claims, what is the main idea or the thesis of the article, and what were their conclusions, and then how is that useful for you in your research project. And then from that point we move into the drafting stage. We'll turn in a rough draft, which will be 1,200, 1,750 words. So, but again, you're not starting over at that point. You've already written an introduction, and based on the feedback you'll receive from your instructor about your introduction and your thesis, there will be some modification, some revision that you may do, where you can kind of expand on what you've already written. Some of what you say in your annotations could be, used in the project, okay? But sometimes I see students including the annotated bibliography at the end of their essay instead of the bibliography or references page proper, and that is incorrect. So don't replace your references page. You need just a references. Once we hit the drafting stage, there's no more. You can just get rid of your annotated bibliography. Like I said, you could use some of what you say in your annotations in your paper, but it's a separate project. So the draft is going to look like a completed, finished academic essay in full APA, style with the cover page. We don't necessarily need an abstract in this case, but you'll have the header, the running head, title, cover page, then you'll have the body of your essay, and a full references page. No annotations on your references page by the time you get to the draft. And if you notice, there's a significant kind of leap between the draft of 1,200 to 750 words to 2,400 to 3,500 words. So the idea is that you will be continually building upon your information and your idea and your claims and expanding. And so in something like this, think in many different directions. Talk about your topic and what you're claiming and your evaluation like a lot. Okay, I mean, I don't know how to stress it more, but in academic writing, like be thinking like as you write, thinking from a different direction, addressing possible disagreements that someone may have with what you're saying. Like you want to look at what you're claiming, and as you're writing, think like, if I was to disagree with this and I was to say, no, it's not that, it's like this, how would I address answering that if someone was challenging me? Because really that's what academic writing is all about. It's about you giving it your all and then putting that all that you've given under scrutiny by people that are your peers, that are as smart as you or smarter than you. And that is really academic writing, is this critical scrutiny that we put on what is being written, what is being claimed, what is being argued for, and on the other side kind of coming out of the fire with a really finely tuned, rational, logical, well-developed, well-researched, well-supported argument and position on a topic. And that's where we'll end up in the very end, with 2,400 to 3,500 words. And if at any point you're ever confused about exactly what you should be doing, there are rubrics associated with every part of this project. So that is how I'm going to grade. And one discrepancy I'll point out: if you're pushing the bare minimum on your word count, it's not actually going to end up being long enough according to the rubric, because the rubric's considering pages and it's not being specific on words. It's saying it's less than 4 pages but more than 2 or something like that. So don't just try to squeak by. If you ever see a word count span, like 24 to 3,500 words. A good sort of goal could be to land somewhere in the middle. But people write, 500 and 600 page books on some of the topics we have in our list. So it can be done. You could go well over 3,500 words in the end. So just to recap, proposal involves an introduction with a thesis, some literature review of an article, and then a couple of paragraphs of you sort of defending the viability of your project, talking about some different angles, ideas, concepts related to, kind of fleshing it all out, making a case. Like, think of it as a proposal as like you're trying to get somebody to give you money to do the project, because this happens in academic writing. You write a proposal, and then someone might give you a grant and say, that sounds like a good project that needs to be done. You've proven your case. Here's $1,000. Go spend a month working on it or something. So that happens, and that's really where we kind of get the proposal idea in academic writing. Is at the graduate and professional level, people are making a case to receive funding a lot of times for these projects. So proposal, annotated bibliography, and draft stage comes along, and then you will have your final draft in the end, which is somewhere between 2,400 to 3,500 words. So I hope this helps. I appreciate you watching this video. Hopefully you have. I get a lot of questions about this, so maybe this can get in front of some of the questions that you may already have. So good luck, and I'll see you online.